Welcome to the Average Punters podcast. I'm your host, Michael Chich. Today we're talking UFC 253, and here to chop it up with me, as always, the man from the Mike Monroe Show. I think he's really excited today, as we all are. Mig, welcome to the show.
And still.
Oh, mate. It was interesting because, like, in the build-up, both dudes were undefeated. The narrative was sort of, skinny Adesanya, to use like Costa's words, versus like the big brute Brazilian in Paulo Costa. And, man, it's so crazy because I know we were talking in sort of build up episodes, like this could go different ways. And I think you were the one that said, this could be an absolute masterclass put on by Izzy, or it could be a case of Paulo Costa is just the big brute and just like hits Adesanya with some shots early and just like bullies him basically. But man, Adesanya just, if you want to talk about a perfect martial arts performance, that's about as close as you're going to get at the highest level, man. Absolute clinic. And the way that he mixed up his strikes, like we'll get deeper into it, but the way he was able to mix up his strikes and keep Costa at bay and just chop at his leg, man, absolutely ridiculous. But just give me your thoughts, man, on the fight.
All right, where do I begin? So, I had in mind a few things going into the fight. I saw a scenario, which I'm pretty sure I alluded to last week, that it would be a masterclass by Stylebender, or he could get sparked by Costa, because that is just the nature of the fight game. It is 50-50. Sometimes the odds wane in another's favor more so than the other, but for the most part, 50-50. We all pretty much knew about whether Costa could, close that distance, get those arms in and hit Izzy. Now, I just think that with the argument of Izzy being a runner and that sort of stuff, it's just crazy. It's ridiculous. And I still see it in comment sections, Chich. I still, after this masterclass, I see, lots of Izzy roasters. And it is what it is. I think people honestly just like get excited and just like, exaggerate the way they feel and inconsequentially say things on the internet. We know this.
Well, it's interesting that like Adesanya, he said in his post-fight press conferences, like as if Costa's team wants him to just stand there, like as in like he's just going to stand there like a punching bag. And Adesanya's like, I'm not stupid. I'm going to like move out of the way and use my techniques and strategy. So, it was crazy. It was interesting when he put it that way. Like, yeah, you got to, come find me. Like I'm not running. Like I'm just playing to my strengths.
There is so much more to be said about how scary it is to approach Adesanya rather than, how scared Adesanya is to approach these big dudes. That is not really the argument, because, if it was so easy for these big guys like Yoel, Paulo Costa to just come in like a steam train and take down Stylebender, it would happen. It would happen. But yeah. It did not. It cannot. Paulo looked like a guy who was flinchy. He sort of looked like Catlin Vieira on the card. You can sort of tell when someone really doesn't like taking a shot. And you know what? I think that's more testament to how much Stylebender's shots pop, honestly, because I haven't really seen Paulo. The narrative going into it was Paulo's willing to take shots to give shots, but he just did not look like the type of guy where that was the case at all. So
I'm sort of curious about. Yeah, you go.
I was just going to say, as I was watching the fight, I had two main sort of components in mind. One, the time where Israel got hit by Yoel like pretty hard in round one of their fight, or round two maybe. When he sort of came in, he sort of got coerced once and then he got popped by Yoel. So I saw a scenario definitely where, Paulo Costa can hit a shot and sort of, obviously Israel's got a good chin and lots of experience, but I sort of certainly think that he wouldn't like getting hit like with the power of Costa. But also I had the Uriah Hall versus Paulo Costa fight in mind, definitely. Uriah Hall had a lot of success with the jab. I thought that if Paulo Costa didn't sort of fix those things up, Israel would definitely have a lot more success than Uriah Hall did. And yeah, it just seems like Paulo didn't, he really thought he could outwit Israel. And it's an interesting factor because Israel's a very smart guy.
Sorry, well, I'd like Well, I'd like to sort of I wonder what the game plan was from Costa going in, because he didn't fight the same way that we've seen him in the past. And obviously this is a different opponent. So, one of the analysts was saying in the build up, don't expect Costa to just like charge in and like throw bombs at Izzy. But maybe in hindsight, that is what he should have done, because it seemed like he might have been waiting for later rounds. Maybe he was
Yeah.
preparing. He's like, all right, I should save my gas tank for these later rounds. But
Personally, what do you think it is? Personally, what do you think it is? Like was that the game plan to just hold off, or do you think it's just too hard to break that distance and get to Israel?
Well, I think, yeah, oh, that's a good point. Maybe it was just too hard. Like Adesanya was too difficult, but he seemed kind of hesitant. Like he was sort of standing there. I felt like he was a bit too preoccupied with the mind games. Like they were talking a
Mm,
lot in the rings. It felt like a bit too theatrical, which I think is fine when you're on top. So sort of like how Garbrandt was when he was fighting Dominic Cruz. He was doing all the theatrics, but he was winning the fight. I thought Costa maybe he was talking a little bit too much to try and get in Izzy's head when in reality he wasn't doing enough in the actual fight to really
mm,
for those sort of tools to be effective. But yeah, I think the game plan might have been in hindsight to wait for those later rounds and then maybe
mm.
unload. So maybe he was thinking that. But I mean, yeah, man, I think it was kind of strange because he was hardly throwing any punches through a few kicks. And I think by the time he sort of by the time it would have gotten to those later rounds anyway, his leg was so banged up from those leg kicks that Adesanya was throwing in that it wouldn't have been effective anyway. So
I don't think he was expecting to, that skinny Adesanya can hurt him that much, by kicking him in the leg and,
maybe.
kicking him in the head and that sort of thing. And also another interesting thing I noticed was, did you see Paulo pre-fight? He was kicking the shit out of the bag and he was working up a sweat. And I automatically, like, I instantly thought alarm bells, like this guy gas tank is going to be an issue for you in this fight. He was sweating it out. So I don't know. Maybe that's just sort of. I know that a lot of people do that.
Yeah, it
So
depends. It might just be
it
his
probably could be part
standard
of the plan. Yeah,
training, but
definitely, definitely. I just thought it was interesting considering first 5 rounds sort of might have just got over pumped, and then it's just interesting that he came out and didn't bring that energy to the fight. But I did do a little clip on the Mike Monroe show and a little pre-fight breakdown, and I did say that in my opinion, I thought that Paulo Costa would be a little bit silly to not at least try some of the tricks Yoel tried. I just thought that, it went too long. And as you alluded to, that when you're not having success with it, it should probably end there.
kind of disappointing, I guess, from a competitive standpoint. Like brilliant as far as a martial arts showcase is concerned, but and I think yeah, that I guess on that point, like if you were going to get someone into martial arts, like you were doing a sort of anti-bullying campaign or something like that, and like this is how on the surface it's not the you know it's not like it's a case of like a skinnier dude who can overcome like a dude who's a bit like more brawny,
Yes.
and like not
Well,
everything's what it seems on the surface. So I thought it
Israel
was
said
sort
it
of
best,
interesting in
aesthetics.
that way. But yeah, exactly, Israel said it aesthetically. But yeah, man. But as far as it was touted as fight of the year, I guess, and obviously it didn't live up to that, but it was still entertaining in the respect of a one-sided, perfect kind of performance. But yeah, it would have kind of been nice to see Costa at least have his moments like against the cage and really start like unloading on Izzy, but he just wasn't there. He just wasn't there by the time Costa got there. Like sort of could weave out the way and sort of keep playing his kickboxing game. So that's what it is. What did you think? I guess I'm sort of interested as far as the psychology behind both sort of dudes, like in the build up, in the press conferences and that sort of thing. Izzy was saying that Costa surrounds himself with a lot of yes men. And like and at the press conference, they were all every time Costa made a joke, they'll sort of like laugh. You could hear people in the background laughing hysterically as far as Costa's crew. And Izzy was sort of saying this is a bit of a theme with Costa, and that's going to be his downfall. Like he's getting a bit too big for his boots. Uh, like yeah, too big for his boots, basically. And in contrast, I guess he was saying at City Kickboxing, he's got people around him who keep him grounded, and he's not getting ahead of himself, and he knows what he needs to do in there. So, did you see any of that in the build up, and do you think that played any role in the fight?
For sure. I mean, I think that well, A, just to touch on, us being from the Oceania sort of region of the world ourselves, we can sort of attest and sort of see more closely the tight knit. There's sort of like a mateship sort of vibe that Australia and New Zealand sort of share, where people have no sort of issue in like checking their friends and humbling each other and that sort of thing. So yeah, I really love seeing that from the city kickboxing guys. And yeah, you can just tell that that's been instrumental in Israel's success, not from a inside the octagon standpoint and outside the octagon standpoint of just probably his own happiness too as a successful person, on a quick rise. But I think that losses in fights are very important, honestly, especially for a guy with like Paulo Costa who has that has Smeagol to sort of quote Israel Adesanya, who called Eric Elbasser in Smeagol. I'm not sure because I haven't seen a lot of the stuff, but I did hear Israel's comments about everyone sort of laughing like schoolgirls, around Paulo. Look, I just think the experience really showed here for Israel. He's been through a lot with the kickboxing career. He's experienced losses in those times, so he's sort of, I guess, from like just the pure MMA viewer, it would seem as though Israel's just come in and he's pretty raw. But if you're unaware, if you're aware of that kickboxing experience, you've sort of been through it. I'm not sure what Paulo Costa's like amateur and pro record prior to UFC is, but I'm going to imagine that he does not have over 100 professional fights. So yeah, I just think that experience played a big factor, and I think Paulo Costa unfortunately had to take the L eventually in the UFC. But he'll get back on the wagon and just yeah, get that humbling that I suppose he may or may not have needed. But we'll see. This is the biggest sort of this is the most interesting time to see how people respond.
Yeah, very well said. Like it's only in really the defeats that you get to see someone's true character
Yeah.
in the end.
And so far he seems like he already said I'm back in the gym or whatever. He put tweets saying back fixing stuff and so good attitude.
And a good attitude from the champ as well. Adesanya already calling out Jared Cannonier. He alluded to this before the fight, so he's another contender in the middleweight division. So someone who Adesanya would like to fight next, and Cannonier's set to fight Robert Whittaker on the Khabib Gaethje card as well. Basically, the winner of that fight seems like they would be fighting Adesanya next. I can tell kind of Adesanya doesn't really want to fight Whittaker again. I feel like he's sort of put that chapter in the books, but he might have to if Whittaker gets the win. And he also mentioned other dudes in the division like Jack Hermanson and, maybe Darren Till down the track as well. He's mentioned in the past. So, I really like that. He's set on sort of defending his title and cleaning out that division to leave no stones unturned, which is kind of refreshing because it is the champ era where everyone's sort of jumping between weight classes, which is admirable in itself because that's a whole other kettle of fish. But it is nice that he's not ducking anyone, I guess. And obviously the Jones fight feels like it's there at some point down the road as well. So that's very interesting. But what else is also very interesting? Our man Hamza Chimaev this morning chimed in, already calling out Adesanya. And this is the point in the story where we're all for Chimaev here on the Average Punters podcast, but I think he's got to settle down a little bit. Like I like his confidence, but man, Israel is on another level, and I think he's got to just, he's got to be careful with what he's saying at this point. But I understand it is just his undeniable confidence. But
if he thinks he's coming out and sparking Israel in the fashion that he sparked our man GM3, he's got another thing coming on,
Yeah.
Hamzat. But I love the spirit. I love it because you've got to start somewhere, and he'll get there. Stylebender 2 years ago was saying the same stuff. So it's very easy to have recency bias in this sport. Very, very easy. But Hamzat, maybe in 2 weeks, maybe in 1 month, he's had another 2 fights and we're like, holy shit, there is no one else but Stylebender to give him. So, it's time will only tell. But as of today, this Monday, settled down. Not ready for Stylebender just yet. And yeah, geez, man, Stylebender, the reign of defenses that I can sense coming, that have already happened as well. you start to look at the top 10 and 15 and you realize that it's just like everyone that he's wiped out. It's Gastelum, Whitaker, you go down the list and it's, getting the vast majority. So it's getting very hard for anybody to question Israel Adesanya.
Well said. Now, the co-main event was Jan Blachowicz. I think I was saying it
Polish
wrong.
power.
Yeah, I think it was, I said it wrong the other week, but yeah, I'll have to start getting it right now because he's the new light heavyweight champion. He beat Dominic Reyes, stopped him in the second round. I kind of had Reyes before this. I hadn't seen too much of Blachowicz, but he kind of made it look easy. And Blachowicz, I guess I felt like during the fight, obviously you could see the big redness on the side of Reyes's body because he kept landing this left body kick, and that looked like really bad. And I reckon that was that would have been hurting really badly. But also, mentally, I can imagine Reyes wouldn't have been in a good place. Like this is not going how it was planned. But yeah, man, he's the new light heavyweight champion. Called out John Jones after the fight, and that's one I'd actually really like to see. But I don't know if it really makes sense given that Jones just vacated the title. So it's like, why would I go back and compete again for the title that I just had? So it kind of doesn't make sense in that perspective. But from a competitive standpoint, he's a dude that, we haven't seen him against John Jones. And just because he made it look so easy against Reyes, and Reyes had the 5-round war with Jones, that is kind of one I'd like to see. But I'm not so sure it does happen next. No, I think we're more likely to see maybe an Adesanya fight or a heavyweight fight with Miocic from Jones before we see that. But who knows, man? It's always unfolding and changing day to day. But what do you make of the co-main event?
Well, shouts out to Laura Sanko and the lads at Submission Radio, who they brought up some really interesting points. Laura said that, if imagine being Dominic Reyes, right? Now, this may or may not be the case, but it's interesting to think about nonetheless. If you genuinely believe you're the guy who defeated John Jones, maybe you walk into a fight with a 37-year-old Jan Blachowicz and don't pull the trigger instantly because you think that you've got all the time in the world, or something to the tune of that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something a little off there. I'm not sure, because I feel like if we see the Dominic Reyes who came out with the eye of the tiger against John Jones, it just goes a little bit different. I still think Polish power can come through and, at any moment.
But I guess that's the argument. Do you think it was the power of Blachowicz that sort of kept him at bay, if you get me?
The power, yeah, for sure. That'll keep you tentative when, someone's there and, can take your head off. There's also an argument that the tentativeness was to do with preserving the gas tank, because he was wrecked rounds 4 and 5 against Jones. He left it all out on the line. So maybe he was going to have a championship round spurt, like in the vein of John Jones in their fight. So, who knows? But, congratulations, Jan Blachowicz, new light heavyweight champion of the world. First person in 10 years who isn't John Jones or Daniel Cormier to hold that belt. It is very interesting stuff. And as our man Israel said, I'm such an Israel mark today, but, it's just aesthetics. And I feel like the John Jones Blachowicz fight, is naturally more interesting now because Jan is sitting there with what John Jones, just gave up. But why it is also very intriguing is because of what he's done to Dominic Reyes, who a lot of people thought got the better of John Jones. So that is definitely, that they should have had that fight as a number 1 contenders fight and then had that as in the lead up to Jones. That would have been cool.
That would have made more sense, I feel.
Yeah, because it's just honestly a little weird. I feel like John should be, if he's going to heavyweight, his primary focus should be putting on that weight, sorting that stuff out rather than quick dip back to light heavyweight and then, just prolong everything else. So, just sort of stick to one thing at this point, I feel, but you never know.
During the week, Conor McGregor tweeted out that he's going to box Manny Pacquiao in the Middle East. Now, I don't think this is a fight that, it's sort of been teased in the past. Like, hey, I could go over to boxing if I need to, like maybe if the UFC doesn't do what they want me to do, they don't give me the fights that I want, then I'm just going to go and box and make a shitload of money. And why not fight Pacquiao? Because he's one of the greatest to ever box, obviously. I don't know if this is a fight that anyone asked for other than maybe McGregor and Pacquiao. But man, it seems like they can't really come to terms, UFC and Conor McGregor. And this boxing match seems like it's legitimately going to happen now. Like Pacquiao's team came out and sort of confirmed it, I guess, even though they
Yeah.
haven't struck a deal, or it's not like official yet. But they're part of the same management team, and yeah, man, look, to be honest, as someone who's a McGregor fan, I'd much rather see him in the UFC. I think he's just much more exciting, and I think just the sport in general is much more exciting compared to boxing. But that's just my personal preference. Uh, but yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know if this is just going to be what it is from now on, more boxing, or it's going to be I'll box Pacquiao, see what happens with Habib and Gaethje, and I can always like come back after that. But it's sort of he feels too far removed from the division at this point, in the lightweight division in the UFC, and it's hard. It's kind of hard for me to get around the Pacquiao fight. Like I don't really. It's just sort of like a show. It's just for show. It doesn't feel like that important in the context of either man's legacy. It's just sort of a money fight, which is fine. You got to keep that train rolling, but yeah, I'd much rather see McGregor like fight Poirier or Gaethje or Habib or Ferguson or Chandler. Like there's just so many potential exciting fights there, and the boxing one just seems like I'm neither here nor there. What do you
Yeah.
think?
It's very interesting analyzing the media hoopla of all this stuff. It really is. I don't know what to make of it. I sit in your, I pretty much echo your thoughts on all of that. And it's just interesting. Like, I feel like if Connor, there's the potential reality that Connor may not be as easy to deal with behind closed doors as he sort of alludes to in his tweets, you know, but if it sort of is that way and people just aren't really helping him out and getting him a fight, it's just like, why are you not getting Conor McGregor a fight? Jeez. But there is something to the, you know, the level of opponents he's calling out.
Diego
It's just,
Sanchez.
yeah. And it's like, there's also, again, could be a context to that. It's like maybe that was just in the context, because he did say that was just in the context of this season and getting the ball rolling. And he did explicitly say he wanted to get a couple to get moving before he got back up to Gaethje and Khabib, which is like, fine. That's the smart way to do it. So, you know, I don't think that's the point of too much criticism.
I
But
think
I don't know. I think sorry. I just think the issue might be the demands of, you know, like, oh, make a pay-per-view, you know, Las Vegas or Dublin. I think it's the shot calling that just maybe doesn't sit well. But yeah, go.
Well, yeah, I think just on the Diego Sanchez front, I don't think he's even ranked. So I think there was something in McGregor tweeted out a conversation that he was having with Dana White, a private conversation, which Dana wasn't too happy about afterwards. But it was saying it will be hard for them to make that fight and justify it to whoever the commission is, because you need to
Mm,
have like competitive fights. You can't just have someone go in there and just absolutely beat the shit out of someone that they're well and truly supposed to, if you get me. Like on paper, it has to at least seem somewhat competitive. That's the gist that I get. So I think that's why maybe that fight wasn't materialized. Like you can't have John Jones fighting someone who's like ranked 18th, you know, like something like
mm.
it's just one of those scenarios. That's what I gather. I mean, you could make it, but you know, it's a little bit, you know, it's like, what are we? Should we be watching this? Should this be happening? Is this safe? Like safe in the terms of, is it going to be competitive? Is there a chance it's going to be competitive? You know?
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think a lot of people would say that, you know, don't count Diego Sanchez out and stuff like that. Just perennial sort of, you know, I don't know, savage. But yeah, I understand what you're saying completely. Like, it's a different time. It is, you know, he was in the Ultimate Fighter 1. It was a long time ago. He's getting there in age, and it doesn't help with the, whatever you call it, the theatrics that's going on at the moment. You know, it's shouts out to Jake Matthews, by the way, our man from our neck of the woods, getting
Mm.
the job done over Diego. Just to segue there, well done, nice dominant performance.
Yeah.
You know, it was very close to the finish, but just, you know, the heart of Diego Sanchez wouldn't allow it. It's solid performance.
He's just quietly racking up the wins, old Jake Matthews. He was at the
Yeah.
Australia event that I went to last year, where Adesanya Whitaker was taking place. I believe he got another
Mhm.
decision win there. So he's got a pretty good record. And the dudes he's lost to have been, like decent fighters. Like I think he lost to
Yeah.
Kevin Lee when he was on the come
Hmm.
up, and then Lee had a pretty good run up until he sort of fought Ferguson after that.
Yep.
But yeah, man, like he's up there fighting at welterweight, I believe. He could also cut to lightweight potentially, but yeah, it could
Like
be good
he's
things for
only
him.
he's only 26, and it just you feel like he's been there forever. Like he's been there
Mm.
since some OG main event, OG pay-per-views, or fight nights and stuff. So, kudos to him. I can't wait to see him just continue to grow.
Could you imagine Conor McGregor and Sparks Manny Pacquiao round one?
Chich, you love a Conor McGregor. Just
No, I'm not saying that's
man's
going to
work,
happen.
man's work. No, if I'm being honest, but again, there's always the case to say that I'll be the first to watch it. I'm never gonna say I'm not gonna watch it, but I just whatever, man, Pacquiao McGregor,
Yeah,
whatever.
no, I
But
feel the
I do,
same.
I understand that Conor is just like, bro, if y'all ain't gonna give me a fight, just give me Pacquiao, But again, it's too hard to know what's going on behind closed doors. It really is. All these egos and
Mm.
who knows.
Yeah, bit of he said, she said with him and
Oh,
Dana
and
and
also, isn't there something? I'm no expert, but isn't there something with the weights as well? Like, isn't Conor much bigger than Pacquiao? Doesn't
yeah,
Pacquiao fight at like one like bantamweight size, or MMA bantamweight?
yeah. I think that Connor's gonna have to cut a lot of weight unless Pacquiao's keen to go. 'Cause Pacquiao's smaller than Floyd,
Yeah,
and him and Floyd fought at 153, I believe that was, which is pretty light for Connor. That's like slightly lighter than lightweight. And
lightweight.
so if you had to cut down even further than that, but maybe they'll agree like Pacquiao can beef up a little bit. So, I guess they'll just have to negotiate that. But yeah, I mean, he can make the weight. He used to fight at featherweight. It'll just be a rough one.
But in saying that, I'm not gonna take away from a man putting food on his family's plate. You know what I mean? You imagine you that's an option in your life to call out and fight Manny Pacquiao because you can. I mean, why the fuck not? Go for it, Connor.
Yeah. No,
And
from a
also that
personal,
because it's all comes from fan bias, like from my standpoint anyway. When I say that I want to see him in the UFC, each to their own. That's how I'm feeling
absolutely.
today.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it feels like a friend. Like if you were fighting Manny Pacquiao, like I'm not gonna
Mm.
be objective critic. I'm gonna be like, bro, just do it. Like it's good for you.
Yeah,
Like do what's good
yeah,
for you. So
and it's not like I don't know exactly. I don't follow boxing like specifically, but it's like from what I understand, Pacquiao's sort of on a tear at the moment. It's not like he's fighting like an over the hill Pacquiao. It's like Pacquiao sort of having the form of his life or something. He's getting some knockouts. So that's just from what I understand. Call me disgusting casual if you need be. But so yeah, fucking interesting.
yeah.
Interesting.
Bro, you are a casual, but you're not disgusting. So don't ever like put yourself down like that. So
Oh, this is why we do this. This is why we do this. This is why I come to you on Mondays, Chicha.
yeah, just sort out, like slowly progress from casual to like hardcore, but then
That's
eventually like
right.
go back to casual in later life. Just I don't know,
Just
go back to the roots.
ebb and flow.
Yeah. All right, Mig, chopping it up on Monday morning. Thank you so much for coming through. And yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty of news coming through during the week, and we'll keep chopping it up like we always do. So
It
cheers,
is
Mig.
always an absolute. It is always an absolute pleasure, my friend. Until next week.
Easy.